You know what's absolutely hilarious? There are people who watched one YouTube video about Airbnb passive income in 2021, took out a second mortgage, bought a cabin in the Smoky Mountains, and are now facing foreclosure because nobody's booking their overpriced vacation rental. I'm not making this up. We're talking about tourist towns where every third house became an Airbnb, where investors bought properties sight unseen based on spreadsheets, promising 30% returns, where occupancy rates have dropped from 80% to 30%, and where those same investors are now desperately trying to sell at a loss before the bank takes everything. This is the great Airbnb investor collapse. The moment when everyone realized that buying a vacation rental in a saturated tourist market during a pandemic bubble was maybe not the financial genius move they thought it was. And the best part? A lot of these investors never even visited the towns they bought in. They just saw Airbnb arbitrage TikToks and threw money at properties in places they couldn't locate on a map. And now those properties are hemorrhaging cash, and the investors are learning what the term underwater means financially. So today, we're going through 10 tourist towns where Airbnb investors are losing everything because someone needs to document the moment when passive income dreams became active financial nightmares. Let's get into it. Here's why this is happening and why it's actually kind of beautiful in a schadenfreude way. During COVID, everyone discovered they could work remotely and travel. Airbnb boomed, tourist towns were packed, and investors saw an opportunity. Buy a property in a tourist destination, list it on Airbnb, make passive income, retire early, become a real estate mogul. The pitch was simple. Tourism never stops. People will always vacation. Your property pays for itself and generates cash flow. It's basically free money, except that pitch was based on a temporary pandemic boom. And when that boom ended, reality set in. First, everyone had the same idea. Tourist towns got flooded with Airbnb listings. Supply exceeded demand. Occupancy rates crashed. Prices had to drop to compete. Second, tourist towns started regulating. Residents were pissed that entire neighborhoods became hotels. Local governments responded with restrictions, permit requirements, and outright bans in some areas. Third, interest rates went up. Those low-rate mortgages from 2020 to 2021 are gone. Refinancing is painful, and new buyers can't afford the same leverage the earlier investors used. Fourth, property management isn't passive cleaning. Maintenance, guest issues, managing calendars. It's work, and when occupancy drops, you're doing all that work for less money. And fifth, the economics just don't work anymore. Mortgage, property taxes, insurance, cleaning, utilities, platform fees, and maintenance eat most of the revenue. When occupancy drops from 80% to 30%, you're losing money every month. The towns on this list have the worst combination of oversupply, regulation, and investor pain. These are places where people bought at the peak, watched revenue collapse, and are now facing foreclosure or selling at massive losses. Number 10. Branson, Missouri. Starting with the Ozark tourist trap where investors learn that Dolly Parton shows. Don't pay your mortgage. Branson has been a tourist destination forever, but the Airbnb boom was something else. Investors bought condos and houses expecting steady tourism. Occupancy rates have dropped from 60 to 70% down to 30 to 40%. Or worse in many properties. Revenue per property is down 40 to 60% from peak. Branson is family vacation America. Country music shows. Table Rock Lake. It's also seasonal and dependent on a specific demographic that's aging out and not being replaced at the same rate. The problem for investors is Branson has massive oversupply now. There are hundreds if not thousands of Airbnb listings. And when occupancy drops that much, you can't cover costs. Investors are selling at losses or letting properties go to foreclosure. Branson is where passive income met passive losses. Number 9. Gulf Shores, Alabama. The Alabama Gulf Coast where beach dreams became foreclosure nightmares. Gulf Shores and Orange Beach saw insane Airbnb investment during COVID. Beach condos that were $200,000 sold for $350,000 to investors. Occupancy has crashed. What was 70 to 80% is now 30 to 50%. Revenue is down 50% or more from peak. Gulf Shores is nice beach on a budget, but it's also hurricane risk, which means insurance costs have exploded. And it's seasonal. Summer is packed. Off-season is dead. Investors who bought at peak are watching their properties generate maybe half the revenue projected. While costs keep climbing, the math doesn't work. Foreclosures are increasing and distressed sales are common. Gulf Shores is where beach investment. Washed out to sea. Number 8. Outer Banks. North Carolina, the barrier island where investors are getting berry red from profit. The Outer Banks had a massive Airbnb boom. Beach houses that were vacation rentals for decades got bought by new investors at inflated prices. Occupancy has dropped as supply exploded. Revenue per property down 40 to 50% from peak in many cases. The Outer Banks is beautiful and has loyal visitors, but it's also very seasonal, has hurricane risk, and is getting oversaturated with rentals. There are only so many weeks people can book. Investors are realizing that beach erosion, insurance costs, and maintenance on coastal properties eat profits, and when occupancy drops, there's no profit left to eat. Properties are being sold at losses. The Outer Banks is where the ocean isn't the only thing. Eroding value. Number 7. Sedona. Arizona, the Red Rock paradise, where investors' bank accounts also turn red. Sedona attracted wealthy Airbnb investors, thinking desert spiritual energy equal guaranteed bookings. Properties that were $500,000 sold for $800,000 to investors. Occupancy has dropped significantly. Revenue projections that assume 70% occupancy are hitting 30 to 40% reality. Sedona is gorgeous and has a specific appeal, but it's also isolated, has limited activities beyond hiking, and is expensive to maintain. And crucially, it got completely oversaturated with Airbnb listings. Investors who paid peak prices are discovering that even spiritual vortexes can't make the numbers work when you're hemorrhaging cash monthly. Distressed sales are increasing. Sedona is where the vortex sucked away your investment. Number 6. Lake Tahoe area of the Sierra. Nevada playground where investors learn elevation doesn't prevent financial decline. Lake Tahoe on both the California and Nevada sides saw a massive Airbnb investment. Cabins and condos that were $400,000 sold for $700,000 or more. Occupancy has crashed. Revenue is down 50% or more from peak. And costs are brutal. Tahoe is beautiful year-round. Skiing in winter, lake in summer. But it's also expensive to maintain, has strict regulations emerging, and got completely oversupplied with Airbnbs. Investors are stuck with properties that cost more monthly than they generate. The math is simple and brutal. They're selling at losses or walking away. Lake Tahoe is where mountain views couldn't save underwater mortgages. Number 5. Scottsdale, Arizona, the desert resort town where investors got burned by more than the sun. Scottsdale attracted investors thinking golf resort plus Phoenix proximity equals easy money. Properties in resort areas sold at premium prices. Occupancy has dropped from 70% to 40% or worse. Revenue down 50% from peak. Scottsdale is nice, but it's not unique. And the resort areas got flooded with Airbnb listings all competing for the same customer base. Plus, Arizona summer is brutal and demand drops. Investors are realizing that carrying costs on expensive Scottsdale properties during low occupancy periods is financial death. Properties are being dumped at losses. Scottsdale is where desert heat met cold financial reality. Number 4. Panama City Beach, Florida, the Florida Panhandle, where spring break money became investor bankruptcy. Panama City Beach had an absolutely insane Airbnb boom. Every condo became a short-term rental. Occupancy has crashed from 70 to 80% down to 30 to 40%. Revenue is down 50 to 60% from peak. Panama City Beach is Party Beach America, spring break, summer families. But it's also hurricane risk, which means insurance is crushing investors. And the oversupply is so bad that you're competing with hundreds of identical condo listings. Investors who bought at peak are losing money every single month. Insurance alone can be $5,000 to $10,000 a year now. Add mortgage, fees, and maintenance, and you're underwater even at 50% occupancy. Panama City Beach is where spring break became financial breakdown. Number 3. Pigeon Forge, Gatlinburg, Tennessee, the Smoky Mountain tourist corridor where cabin fever turned into foreclosure fever. This area is ground zero for the Airbnb investor collapse. Cabins everywhere. Occupancy has dropped from 70 to 80% to 30 to 40% in many properties. Revenue down 50 to 60% from peak. And crucially, there are estimates of thousands of cabins on the market or in distress. Pigeon Forge and Gatlinburg are cute mountain tourist towns. Dollywood, Smoky Mountains. But they got absolutely destroyed by overbuilding. There are entire developments of cabins built purely for Airbnb. Investors who bought cabins for $300,000 to $500,000 are watching them generate maybe $1,000 or $2,000 a month, while costs run for to $6,000 or more. It's financial suicide. The foreclosure and distress sale wave in this area is genuinely significant. This is where the Airbnb bubble is bursting loudest. Pigeon Forge and Gatlinburg are where cabin in the woods became cabin in foreclosure. Number 2. Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. The South Carolina beach where investors are all washed up. Myrtle Beach had a condo Airbnb mania. Every high-rise became short-term rentals. Occupancy has crashed, 60 to 70% down to 30 to 40%. Revenue down 50% or more. Myrtle Beach is accessible cheap beach vacation, but it's also extremely seasonal and got completely oversaturated. There are thousands of Airbnb condos competing. Investors are trapped. Condo fees, insurance, mortgage, and costs exceed revenue at current occupancy. They can't sell without losses. They can't refinance at good rates. They're stuck bleeding money or facing foreclosure. Myrtle Beach is where the tide went out and revealed who was swimming naked financially. Number 1. Joshua Tree, California. At number 1. The desert outside Palm Springs where investors learn that influencer Instagrams don't pay mortgages. Joshua Tree became an Airbnb investor goldmine during COVID. Desert Instagrammable vibes. Close to LA. Every other house became a mid-century modern Airbnb. And then it all collapsed. Occupancy has crashed from 70 to 80% to 30% or worse. Revenue is down 60% or more from peak. And the oversupply is absurd. There are hundreds of nearly identical desert Airbnbs competing. Joshua Tree was a boom based on pandemic trends and Instagram aesthetics. When that ended, investors were left with expensive desert properties in the middle of nowhere that nobody wants to rent. Properties that sold for $400,000 to $600,000 are now worth $300,000 or less. Investors are facing $100,000 plus losses if they sell. Many are just walking away. The foreclosure rate in the Joshua Tree area is reportedly significant. This is investor capitulation on a community scale. Joshua Tree is where desert vibes became desert investor graves. So what does all this mean? First, the Airbnb investment boom was a bubble. It was based on temporary pandemic conditions and unrealistic projections. That bubble is popping. Second, tourist town oversupply is real. When every third house is an Airbnb, occupancy for everyone drops, basic supply and demand. Third, passive income is never truly passive. Managing short-term rentals is work, and when returns drop, that work becomes unprofitable. Fourth, regulations are coming. Tourist towns are cracking down on short-term rentals. Future regulatory risk makes these investments even riskier. And fifth, buying at the peak of a bubble is financially dangerous. Many investors bought in 2021 to 2022 at inflated prices with low-rate debt. That debt is now expensive to service, and the properties have dropped in value. So there you have it. 10 tourist towns where Airbnb investors are losing everything. This isn't about hating Airbnb or wanting investors to fail. This is about documenting what happens when speculative bubbles pop. A lot of people made very bad financial decisions based on YouTube gurus promising easy passive income. For investors trapped in these situations, the options are grim. Keep losing money monthly hoping things improve. Sell at a significant loss. Or let the property go to foreclosure and take the credit hit. For people thinking about Airbnb investing, this is a warning. The easy money era is over. Oversupply is real. Regulations are coming. And the math rarely works unless you bought years ago at low prices. The Airbnb gold rush created a lot of fool's gold. And now the investors holding that fool's gold are learning expensive lessons about market saturation and financial leverage. So here's my question for you. If you're an Airbnb investor in a struggling tourist market, what's your plan? Are you holding and hoping? Selling at a loss? Or have you already walked away? Let me know in the comments, because this collapse is reshaping tourist town real estate and creating opportunities and disasters simultaneously. And if you enjoyed watching the Airbnb bubble pop in real time, maybe subscribe. We cover real estate markets, investment disasters, and economic schadenfreude. Someone has to document the Airbnb investor collapse. Might as well be me.